Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for...
Have a holly jolly Christmas. It's the best time of the year. That one's from McLean. UnSpun!
He just loves it when you sing. He loves it when you sing. McLean says that last week was his favorite podcast we've done, but we need more singing. So there you go. Do what the boss wants.
Exactly.
I'm going to give you this, though.
Double gun. Double shot.
Guns. You want to know why?
Double shot, triple shot. Oh, yeah.
We're recording this on
it's Tuesday. We're recording early because I'm going away for a holiday. So we're doing our year-end review, pre-Christmas, pre-New Year's. Got our Christmas trees. I got my mini one at the office here. If you're listening, we both have our festive decorations up. 1 year to go today, though, on recording day. The first shot was given of the vaccine in Canada. It's pretty cool. I can't believe we were talking before the show. I'm going, that happened this year? Like we're talking about something else. We're going to talk about. I'm going, was that this year?
I know, like, right? Everything feels 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yes.
But I will say this, the stat that came in yesterday on Monday, that Canada is the most vaccinated country in the world.
Nice. So
I love
Winter Olympics and COVID vaccines. We're good at those two things. We're world renowned for our winter sports and our vaccination skills. Well, that's great. I mean, that's great. I mean, I got my third shot. You got your third shot. Feeling
Everybody
pretty good.
Get their third shot. And if we may, okay, you were AstraZeneca, and I'm so proud of you for doing that. You went double AZ, right? No, but you did. You're like, let's go. I'm going to the.
I didn't even go double AZ. I went AZ, and I went the other. What was it called? COVID Shield.
Shield.
I'm like the discount brand. So that's how
that's
how desperate I was to get the shot.
But that is like the next level of George-Affleck for me, is because you actually you can be a rule breaker. You challenge authority. You like to know what you know. But when somebody said take the first possible option when it comes to vaccines, you said, hell yes, I will do that. I did the same. I had somebody ask me about my booster. What'd you get? And I said, I got Pfizer. So I've had Pfizer 3 times. They're like, oh, it's way better if you had Moderna. And I'm like,
for God's sakes.
They offered me Pfizer. I took it. Come on, people. And I want to
armchair scientists. We love them.
Exactly. And I want to address the news that had come out, a very teeny little study out of the UK, 581 people involved in the study in the UK, that found that AstraZeneca, the headline was like, less effective, remarkably less effective over Omicron. And then when you actually read the science in the article, it said, but they only tested one of the waning antibodies. They didn't check the long-term
I know,
efficacy.
and
it was just like,
I saw that, and the headline was, not this core of the story. It was total clickbait. That's not cool. There's just too soon to say what the hell this variant's doing. We had beta, we had delta, we had whatever. We had Omicron. It's like, I don't know, but you know what? Get your shot, and pretty much you're okay. Just get your shot.
Much. It is once again, though, the concern here. Once again, even for those who are fully vaccinated, there are people with underlying health issues. There are people, over the age of 75, which seem to be, with Delta, even without the new variant, that could overwhelm our healthcare system. And again, people need to understand that is the thing. Like, I think about in this year in review, George, you and I are tired. We're tired. Imagine how an ER doctor or nurse or infectious diseases specialist feels right now.
Yeah.
Even our family physicians must be exhausted.
My sisters, I have 2 sisters who are nurses. One of them is like done. She's retired last 2 weeks ago. She's like, I can't. She's a year older than me. And she's been doing it for 25 years. And she's like, I can't. And she's a great nurse, and she was exhausted, and it's definite post-traumatic stress syndrome for her. She is stressed out and she is exhausted, and it's affecting her health, and we worry about her, but we also thank her. I mean, my sister Julia, she's amazing, and it's like, it's brutal, brutal.
To that point though, for people like Julia who say I can't, you know what? Good for you to have to take that step. And there are people that are living it and it's crushing their soul in a way that, yeah, it's ruining their lives. We need the people who step up, and we have great gratitude to those who do. And yet also for those in whatever might be the line of frontline worker exhaustion one might be in, from the people stocking the warehouses as we were all clicking our way through our Christmas shopping, all the way down to the people in the grocery store, the people,
My son
I'm
works
so
at a dog
grateful.
food store. He's there, been there
Oh my God.
since day one, and they couldn't close, and they were there for dog owners and cat owners, and so they took risks, and you have to respect that too. So,
Essential services. So let's talk more about, we can talk more about COVID, but I also want to get into the opioid crisis and what we've seen there over the last 365 days, because that's a whole nother struggle. But before we leave the subject of COVID-19, as exhausted as we all might be with this news cycle and the fact that we're hearing once again that perhaps Christmas is going to be smaller, or we are going to have to shrink again down to perhaps fewer at the holiday table out at the restaurant, or keeping tighter into it. It is not. This is unspun, right? This is where we talk about what's actually happening, George, and the people who are starting to sound conspiracy theorists, like people who typically would not, who are feeling that COVID exhaustion piece and want to just blame it on somebody, like the hanging of dummies outside of the legislature because people are frustrated.
Yeah, that's not cool. That's too far. That, remember Kathy Griffin when she did the thing with the president Trump and the head, and she got canceled? How now this was like, what are people doing? Come on. We're all working hard. Everybody's working hard. Everybody's stressed out. We're all in, whether you believe in the vaccines or don't believe in the vaccines, we're all still, it's exhausting right now. And it's this past year, 2 years now of this, and it's going to be another year, another 2 years of probably this kind of ups and downs and variants and learning as we go. Can we just stick together? Just try to be united in our understanding that we're all stressed out and exhausted and bored and mad and all those emotions. It's not just
and
sad.
Loss and stress. I think about those who can't access healthcare because our healthcare system is clogged up by unvaccinated people. There's that anger piece that comes into play. There's frustration for everyone. You haven't read my column yet because I haven't submitted it, but my column this week, spoiler alert, is actually about my middle for my year end is for people who use the term the media. I want them to stop that. Like there are people working so hard trying to find the facts, bring the truth, hold, power to account, sift through Freedom of Information Act redacted documents that cost them money now, and for people, and more, I'm hearing it from people like who are my lifelong friends who don't even realize when they're sitting at the table and they're like, oh yeah, well, the media. And I'm like, I'm the media. I'm actually working really, really, really. And it wasn't that long ago where those same people would say, ask Jody, she'll know. Ask Jody, she's covering this. She knows, she's our resource. And now they're like,
why we do this podcast.
I don't want. I actually had somebody say, well, I just didn't want to lecture. I'm like, wow, okay. I'm now a lecture by delivering the facts. Come on. So it's a little bit of a plea. It is my frustration, though. I don't want to leave the profession that I love because I can't manage the online harassment, the standing in front of a camera and somebody yells, something sexualized behind me, or worse. I've spoken to other journalists in radio in particular, one radio journalist in particular, who was being assigned to go stand in front of a hospital. And she's like, I'm not going there. I can report on that from here because if I go there, I'm a target. And that's just broken. So I'm going to write a little bit about how the responsibility on society, on each one of us, and I mean, good on the people who are listening to Unspun podcast right now, because clearly you have identified a reputable news source in the Orca, right? There are reputable news sources, and then there are those that are not. And there's going to inevitably be somebody going, well, do you know who pays for the Orca? Guess what? Somebody pays for media at every level. There's always got to be somebody paying the bills in one form or another. But freedom, I've never been told. Have you ever been told what to say or write
No.
on this?
No, and even when I worked as a journalist at CBC and other media outlets over the years, I have made a conscious decision or unconscious decision throughout my life to choose careers that people hate. Journalist, politician, marketer. Anyways,
yeah,
so
that's
yeah,
funny.
no, I have
That
not.
is really
And
funny.
without good media, we'd lose democracy. I mean, that's the threat, and people need to be respectful to those journalists who are trying to do. Yeah, there's bad journalism that happens for sure, but
For
it's usually
sure.
more about laziness than conspiracy theories. But
Can we also
generally,
talk about the scientists as well? Because the
mhm,
journalists and the scientists are who are being targeted right now. And the journalists and the scientists are the perfect storm. And in the unspun world, George, the people who wish to dupe citizens, which is what I'm referencing in my column, those that want you confused, those that want you in the dark, would love you to hate journalists and
mhm,
scientists.
yes.
And that's the fact. Like the people that are like, "Oh, you're owned by big pharma." No, Peter Hotez is not owned by big pharma. He's actually there trying to tell you the truth. And it's just we need to like take a breath, step back, and acknowledge how this spiral has led
Well,
us
you
to a
don't
place.
believe random dude on Facebook anymore? Random dude says this on Facebook. It's got to be true. I don't believe the scientists or
Yeah,
journalists. I'll believe random dude on
yeah,
Facebook.
I've done my own research. Oh my god.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh
so
yeah.
let's go to the opioid crisis
Hmm.
in Canada now. I mean, a year ago it was very much more localized. It felt more localized. It felt like a more of a BC problem. The money laundering attached to fentanyl, attached to the downtown east side, that was sort of
Hmm.
spreading throughout Metro Vancouver and throughout northern BC and growing. And now this is its own epidemic of death and carnage of innocent people. What do you see it from your political? Put your political hat on and tell us
Yeah.
what you see.
Well, it started when I was in office, and obviously in Vancouver being one of the hot spots right out of the gate. We tried as a council, and I didn't necessarily think this, support all the ideas because I felt this is not a Vancouver issue, like so many issues, and we can't solve this. And it continues to be that problem. Now it's an international issue. And I don't really see a lot of leadership anywhere on this issue of solving it. I really don't. I don't. It's like housing and homelessness. It's multiple layers of need that need to be fixed, whether it be the construction industry and the fact that they get prescribed medication and then they get taken off that medication and they self-medicate. That's one avenue into the opioids. There's the downtown east side, people who are addicted and get onto opioids because it's cheap. The audience of who are addicted and are dying of these opioid deaths. It's so diverse and so complicated, but I still don't see where's the leadership? Where is the provincial and federal leadership? And I think that and we've talked about this, that the pandemic has proven that governments can come together, corporations can come together to solve a problem very quickly. 1 year ago today, we got the first vaccine in Canada, and 1 year before that, we had heard about the COVID variant and COVID in general, and what was it called back then? The coronavirus. Uh,
Yeah,
2 years exactly from now, approximately about Christmas time, 2 years ago, we heard these first cases in China,
in
and
Wuhan. Yeah,
look what we've pulled
yeah.
off. It's amazing. Even though we have, people who are vaccine hesitant and there's frustration and we have a lot of people to vaccinate around the world. But what progress we've made, what solutions we found. Why can't we do that with opioids and with housing and homelessness? There needs to be less politics and more coming together about solving these massive crises. And the environment's the other one. The multiple. I don't know when. There's never has there. We talked about how stressful and hard it is because you've got multiple things happening. We had the floods here in BC to add on top of that, which is related to the environment. We have opioid, we have COVID, we have housing and homelessness, we have economic potential collapse and inflation. God, it's like what? What? What's this?
You
All
get put on
the,
hold. You call 911, you get put on hold. When you get
yeah.
through, the ambulance takes maybe a few hours to get there. This is not COVID-19 was one first domino to fall to expose so much of what was very precarious, even right
Hmm.
down to and including infrastructure on highways
Yeah.
and dikes
Yeah.
and floodplains. I mean, we've learned
Hmm.
so much over this past 365 days, and yet there are still people who would push back on the spending of money required to take the steps. Like you said, that was what made me most fearful when COVID-19 first hit Canada. When Justin Trudeau first stepped before the podium at Rideau Cottage and said, uh, "Go home, stay home, and we're going to pay you to do that." I was like, "What?" You know,
Yeah.
because that's such an extreme, and how that has become somewhat normalized over this
I
time. We've
know.
learned a
It's
lot about
amazing.
what we can
Oh,
accept, right? Mask wearing.
oh,
I'll wear a mask. I'm
how
fine with it.
I know we have shown how nimble we can be as humans. Surprisingly, we're not as rigid as you might think, and given all the crisis we've been going through the last couple of years, um, and again, you know, the COVID thing we led to a solutions very quickly, maybe because it was more specific and easier to find a solution. I don't know, but with the opioid crisis, it's really a matter of we know it's a massive issue related to uh, you know, prescription drugs, doctors, healthcare
I know
system.
this is going to shock you. Yeah, this is going to shock you. You ready? I agree with Dr. Henry.
You never agree with her. Oh wait,
Safe supply, man. Safe supply. Come on.
I know, but
Why?
that's not
Why?
going to solve the problem.
No, but it might actually save 6.5 lives a day in
Yes,
BC,
it's
just for
one
starters.
of the
But
pillars, or one of yeah. We need to look at why
it's
are people getting addicted. You know, why are people getting
right.
injured on the
No,
job and then not
no
allowed to go,
question.
being forced to work. We have proven that we can create. And I'm not, believe me, I think people know me. I'm not a king. You know, the big supporter of the welfare state. But you can be
No.
strategic and specific in a welfare process if it requires it. And I think, you know, government needs to find ways to be specific and targeted. So with the opioid crisis, providing workers who become addicted to prescription drugs the ability to be paid or find a solution that's not humiliating or impossible to do, so that they can recover. There are lots of ways that they can recover, and they're not that complicated. They just need a helping hand. But we
Yeah.
don't do that. And these guys, a lot of them, you know, I'm kind of targeting that industry, but you know, they make good money, so they support a family. Perhaps they have their bills to pay. That's all stress, and they go, well, I
They
just got to
keep
keep on
going.
going.
Yeah.
I got to keep on going, so I'll just do this. It's
So
brutal.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. I think that's an important message. We'd be remiss if we didn't point out also how much of the uh, impoverished and substance addicted portion of society is represented by Indigenous peoples, First
Hmm.
Nations peoples who have been living and and truly medicating generational trauma. And just yesterday, the federal government announced $40 billion now being put on the books. Today, while we're talking,
Hmm.
the federal budget will be
Yeah.
revealed by Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland. But that 40 billion with a B is a first step in the direction of trying to help those who suffered at the hand of the government in the foster care system that was completely racist and broken, identified now as that. Wanting to
Hmm.
talk a little bit more about federal politics as well. Anita Anand, like watching the new defense minister, that a woman was the one who delivered the apology on behalf of the government for those who were sexually assaulted and harassed in the Canadian military. Was a bit shocking to me that to watch a woman say, "We're sorry, I'm sorry." I would like to have seen somebody with some medals over here, and maybe a man that watched it happen. I don't know, that was complacent. I'd like to hear the apologies from that. That's my unspun on
Complicit, you mean?
watching that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
sorry, complicit. Yes,
Complicit,
thank you.
complicit. So,
Thank you.
yeah, and so you kind of touched on this year. We had residential schools. We had the whole issue related to the military. It's been
Yeah,
those are things that we haven't. I didn't even include in my
tumultuous.
list. And so, reparations and a process by the federal government related to that is crucial. And apologies are great, but yeah, maybe the people who were directly responsible for some of the abuse would be nice to hear from them. But you get what you get, I guess. I don't know.
You do. I got
I
this
mean,
little guy
it's a
here.
decision by the military to put the head of it. Oh, hello. He looks like the dog. You're showing your dog. It looks like the dog from the Jim Carrey movie. We put the
The
antlers
Grinch.
on the Grinch.
Yeah, I could put antlers on him. He
Yeah.
would look just like him. But that's Calvin making an appearance because
Hello, Calvin.
you haven't
Where's
seen him in a
Hobbs?
long time. Hobbs. So I wanted to just touch on those things because, there's so
Mm-hmm.
much we could talk about in our year in review here, but wanting to go sort of federal, provincial, and municipal, all can have an election piece to the puzzle. I mean, yeah, that's what we were talking about prior
Yeah,
to,
that's
to
right. I
hitting record.
totally going. Was that election this year? Was that just like 3 months ago? God, federal election was only that seems like about a million years ago. I just can't. My time is so mixed up. I guess in my head,
Warped.
everything is just warped. That was literally in September. That was 2 months
It
ago.
was
2 months
September.
ago. I just what?
Almost three
Anyways,
months. We're
yeah,
4 days
okay.
shy of 3 months. Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
because it ended up the exact same people and
Remember,
nothing
I had to fly
changed.
all
It's
the way to
hard to.
Montreal. Remember, I had to
That's
fly
right.
all the way
Yeah.
there
And I
and
was
work the whole
doing
time.
interviews. Yeah. I remember now. But I guess we ended up where we started, exact place where we started. So it seems like it was a non event in the end. So just a lot of
Right.
money. So that happened. Anyways, moving on.
Moving on. Well, we kind of had similar in the provincial sense, but that was in the October prior to. So,
Yes.
but provincial
Mm-hmm.
government speaking, I mean, a
But
lot's happened there. Look at John
well, the
Horgan.
majority of government is
Yeah.
pushing things through that aren't good. You touched on it with regards to paying for
FOI.
the free FOI, freedom of information, making journalists pay for this now. $25, $25 adds up to thousands of dollars for a journalist that likely hasn't got that kind of money. It's only
Because,
a few million for it's total attack on journalism. It's a total attack
yeah,
on journalism, and I think it's offensive and wrong.
agreed.
That's all I
Freedom
have to
of
say.
information should be free,
Yes, there's a
period.
key word there. Mm-hmm. So,
That's
anyways,
how that
that's
goes.
what happens when you put in a majority government that clearly doesn't like doesn't like freedom, I guess.
No. But this
Anyways,
government, interestingly enough, and I'd like you to, if you can, I didn't ask you this beforehand, but maybe grade our provincial government somewhat on the handling of a global pandemic, a heat dome, wildfire state of emergency, followed by atmospheric rivers and the washing out of all of the major highways that connect the coast to the rest of Canada. And the news just yesterday, where Transportation Minister Rob Fleming is saying now that the Coquihalla might actually be ready sooner than expected
yeah,
for commercial vehicles, which is a piece of very good news. Like this has been a lot
I know. And I would,
for
if I
any
were to,
government.
yeah, and if I were to rate them, I would say what I would describe the provincial government, anyways, and maybe a little bit in the federal is hesitant decision making when it matters. I don't know if that's because they are in denial about another thing coming happening. They're like, oh, for
Right.
God's sakes, not another thing. And so they're just, please don't happen, please don't happen. Oh God, it's happening. Okay, we got to deal with this. Or is it just incompetent management? I don't know, because I feel like they hesitated on the fires, they hesitated on the floods. I can't think how far back on COVID. That was early on in their term, and it was a minority government. But hesitancy seems to be. I
I will
know.
jump in on the COVID one because what I did appreciate in covering the story on a federal level and watching different provinces manage it in different ways, and Keith Baldry often
Yeah,
says that in his conversations
yeah,
with John Horgan when COVID first hit, was that
hundred
he was
percent.
not going to be the face of this, that he was going to have Adrian Dix, the
Yeah,
health minister, step forward, and that Dr. Henry would lead the BC face of, and science would lead, politics would
yeah,
not. And we've seen how politics has impacted other jurisdictions. And
yeah.
people argue with me all the time on social media about whether British Columbia has handled COVID well or not. The experts and the scientists who aren't from here and aren't politically aligned with anything from here all point to British Columbia as an example of really taking something that
Yeah.
hit in a way that had very little information and
He, he,
managed through it.
Yeah, and I think that decision, because guess what politicians are? They can be erratic. You can see it with Boris Johnson in the UK, which is where I'm going for Christmas. I'm at his family, so I'm going there. And every day he's in, what's going on? Like nobody knows. He's just announcing stuff, and I don't know where the science is. He's just kind of announcing these things. And you see that in other provinces here. That when you put a politician in a crisis situation where there is specific, like in this case, science, it's a bad idea. I think it's a good decision to put the scientists in charge, because it's hard to, politicize a scientist, because they're pretty much as apolitical generally, unless for some reason they are a politician. But generally,
They're
scientists are
following
like,
the science.
yeah,
They're
it's like
looking
one
at
plus one plus
the
one is two.
data, and they're sharing the data. Let's talk about municipal politics before we run out of time here, because
Yes.
we can point around Metro Vancouver to a number of leaders. And I would like to start with the positive leaders that we have seen in Port Coquitlam and in Delta and in North Vancouver. Some pivots around COVID that were really immediate. It's
Abbotsford.
like, we're going to open up. Yeah, Abbotsford, another one. We're gonna make promenades and patios, and we're gonna cut through the red tape, and we're gonna create space, and we're gonna allow you to eat your dinner with your bottle of wine at the park. And then you look around more locally. Don't even get me started on Park Board, but let's talk about the municipal government here in the city of Vancouver, and then we'll get to Doug McCallum.
Well, it's hard to talk about the past without trying to think about the future. We're into an election year, so does the past even matter? What we do know is that the council is, talk about erratic. They are all over the map. We have about 100 people running for mayor next year. God knows how that's going to pan out. Probably 200 people running for council. It's going to be ridiculous, and it's not a particularly positive outcome I see for the future of Vancouver, unfortunately. Surrey, on the other hand, we have a mayor who's been charged this past week since our last podcast with obstruction of, what was the actual charge? Mischief.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mischief, little mischievous mayor. We'll see how
saying that his foot was run over by somebody who was anti Surrey police force.
Yeah.
And then the investigation showed that there was enough evidence to say that perhaps he made that up. Of course,
he's hired high priced lawyer being paid for by the city, which is standard procedure, by the way. All the media talking about this, and it's actually standard procedure that you get. Unless it fails and you lose, you generally then may have to pay back. However, I still stand by the fact that he's going to win again in Surrey.
Same lawyer who represented Meng Wanzhou. That ilk. Just so you know, you think he's going to win again there, and you think Kennedy-Stewart's going to win again in Vancouver because so many people are running.
There's so many people running on the right side of the spectrum in Vancouver that will unless somebody else runs against Kennedy on the left side of the political spectrum, then I say
somebody like win.
Well, Jody Wilson-Raybould, or that would be one that if she were to run, he would be toast. But so in Surrey, though, I just don't think Doug McCallum. I don't see anybody rising. It's a long time. It's 10 months. Somebody might come along that has one of those councillors maybe will stand out more than others. But I would say that he's got a pretty good case to say he did what he promised to do. And I've said that over and over. And this situation and being charged kind of feeds into his narrative. And I'm not going to get into the specifics because I don't want to put us, because we can't really talk about it. But it feeds into his narrative about Surrey, and as far as why they need to be independent in their own ways. So it's going to be an interesting year. Cool. Civic politics is going to be our biggest subject.
That is true. And it all comes together on your birthday. So we're just going to have to make sure we put it in our day timer, October 15th, 2022, George Affleck's birthday. George
_
That's the Twitter sound. At George_Affleck is where you find this guy on social media. I'm at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y, at Jody Vance. Of course, you're following the Orca on your social media, as well as getting the Fin, which it continues to be my favorite thing that pings into my inbox all too early in the morning. And McLean always does watch our podcast and all the way to the end as well. So I'm going to point out that one of my favorite things is when I find a typo in the Fin.
Oh, never.
Right? Very rare. But because he's so good at his job, I had somebody say to me the other day, "You're a really good writer." And I said, "I have a very good editor." So I just want to end off today with the gratitude for the hardworking editor-in-chief of the Orca, who works diligently with all of us to make us look better and sound better and be better. And I won't hold it against him that he loves it when you sing.
Thank you very much. So, hey, have a great Christmas holiday season and New Year's, and we'll see you in the new year. Unless something big happens, we'll be back to do a last minute episode, but this is our last episode until the new year. So we're taking a break.
Take your laptop. Take your laptop to the UK. I might jump in with an Unspun with friends. I might have something lined up that's kind of Christmassy and cool and still a little bit controversial, but I'll let you know.
Okay, well, who's going to edit that?
You.
Bye. Have a great Christmas.